there, it's Ann Taylor Pittman with CookingLight.com. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm laughing because I'm not as prepared as I like to be. I'm missing some things, but it'll be good. It's all good. Today I am making chicken meatball and vegetable soup. It is a delicious pot of brothy goodness where it's a little bit of a spin on chicken soup. So the chicken comes in the form of chicken meatballs. I love meatballs. I adore meatballs. So this is a really fun take on chicken soup. So I'm going to heat up my pan, and while that's heating, I'm going to make my meatballs. Actually, I need to plug in my pan, so bear with me. See, I told you I wasn't that prepared. I also had hinted that we might be a few minutes late, but we're not. Okay, so let me get that going. And then let me get the meatballs going. So I'm gonna put on gloves for this so that it's nice and tidy. I have 1.5 pounds of ground chicken right here. Not ground chicken breast. Ground chicken breast is going to be too lean. You want a little bit of richness here in the meatballs. The chicken breast will just give you meatballs that are a little too dry. So opt for ground chicken. Okay, and then to that I'm gonna add 2/3 cup of panko. I like the panko here. If you just have regular breadcrumbs, you can use those too. Maybe start off with 1/2 cup and see if that's enough because they have a finer texture than the panko, so you might need a little bit less. Okay, I'm also gonna add just a little bit of salt. Most of the salt is going to go into the broth for the soup. And some dried oregano, 1 teaspoon of dried oregano. Dried herb works great here. So you could also use fresh oregano if you have it on hand. I would triple the amount, so I would go for 1 tablespoon of chopped fresh if I was using fresh. Okay, and then let's see. I have 1 garlic clove that I grated on a microplane to make that kind of garlic pulp so that it disperses very evenly throughout the meatballs. And fresh garlic, I just love fresh garlic in meatballs. I have 1 egg that I'm gonna add in, and then 1.5 ounces of Parmesan cheese. So you know, I did not add a lot of salt to the meatballs. The cheese is gonna add a good bit of saltiness and flavor to the meatballs, so we don't need a lot of added salt. Okay, so I'm gonna dig in. Let me get my tray here ready. So I just have a baking sheet or a sheet pan that I've lined with foil. I've coated it with a little cooking spray, and that's gonna make cleanup easy for the meatballs. So I'm gonna get these started. Mixing, mixing, mixing. You know, when it comes to meatballs, meatloaf, that kind of thing, mixing with my hands always goes the best, is always the easiest and most efficient. Have you tried mixing meatballs with, you know, a spoon or a spatula? I mean, you can do it, sure, but it's kind of nice to get in there and squish around with your hands. I do have a little grip in my glove. It's fine. My hands are protected. At home, I don't wear gloves. I just wash my hands a whole lot. Okay, and this is gonna make 32 meatballs. The soup serves 8. Each person gets 4 meatballs. So when I'm doing this, you know, I don't have a 2 tablespoon scoop at home. It's about 2 tablespoons per meatball, or a scant 2 tablespoons, so just under 2 tablespoons. So I just take the bowl and kind of pat the mixture down, and I kind of divide it into quadrants. I know that each quadrant should make about 8 meatballs. So then I take each one, divide it in half, and know that that should make 4. Divide that in half, that should make 2. Does that make sense? It's just my way to kind of keep everything straight and even and make this process go a little faster. So these are going to bake instead of, you know, cooking in a pan or pan frying them. I like to bake the meatballs. I'm gonna do maybe about half of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See, I was talking and not paying attention. Yep, I wasn't paying attention here. If you have some that are a little bit smaller than the others, it's okay, no big deal. Everybody should get 4 pretty good sized meatballs in their bowl.
And we have a question from YouTube, actually.
Oh, great.
Christina wants to know, can you mix the meatballs in a stand mixer?
You could mix them in a stand mixer. I would go on probably pretty low speed. I almost said heat, low heat. I would go on a pretty low speed just to prevent you from like kind of battering the meat, you know what I mean? So I think that would work really well. I know a lot of people love to use their stand mixers for mixing things other than cakes and cookies. See, I'm talking, y'all. I'm sorry, I'm not paying close attention to what I'm doing. Okay, I'm gonna stop doing this in a minute. You get the idea. So these are going to bake at 400 degrees for 15 minutes, and just until they're done. But here's the thing, they're gonna be pale, sad little guys because ground chicken is white meat. It is going to create a meatball that is very pale. So it is very important to take the step of broiling the meatballs for a couple of minutes after you bake them. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm gonna set these aside. I'll finish that later. We can have that for lunch. Okay, so let me show you the meatballs when they're done. Okay, so I bake them and then again I broil them because they're just so pale if you take them out of the oven and just leave them like that. I like to have a little bit of browning on there because it looks better, it looks more delicious. Okay, so I can build the soup now.
And we have another question from YouTube.
Oh, great.
Can you sub in ground turkey, or will that change the flavor of the meatballs too much?
You can absolutely sub in ground turkey. That would be an excellent substitute here. The texture is going to be very similar. Again, for ground turkey, it's going to be so lean that the meatballs will be kind of dry, and I don't want you to end up with dry meatballs. Okay, so I've added in a little bit of canola oil, 2 tablespoons here to a big pot, a big Dutch oven, and then I'm adding 3 cups of carrots. Why 3 cups? Because my pet peeve is that a lot of soup recipes don't give you enough carrots, and I'm always fighting for the carrots. I want more carrots. So 3 cups of carrots, 2 cups of chopped onion. So this is loaded with aromatics, loaded with good flavor, and 1.5 cups of diced celery. I'll get that going here in the pot. So now ideally you want this to saute for about 10 minutes until the vegetables get pretty soft. They may be just shy of being tender, but you want them to cook, to sweat down a good bit. I'm gonna shortcut that process here so that you don't have to watch the whole time. I'm gonna give it another minute. I'm gonna go ahead and add in some of my ingredients, even though I don't think this is the point in the written recipe where they go in, but just in the interest of time. I'm adding the rest of my salt. That was 3/4 of a teaspoon. A teaspoon of black pepper, so a lot of black pepper to boost the flavor. A couple of bay leaves. I'm a big fan of bay leaves and anything that simmers in liquid. Okay, and then I have here 8 cups of unsalted chicken stock. I love the unsalted chicken stock that I buy at the grocery store. Sometimes it's sold out. It seems to always be sold out at one of the grocery stores I like. Unsalted chicken broth works well too. But I like to go for unsalted because there's so much sodium. You'd be surprised in a lot of the stocks and broths out there. So I like going for unsalted and then adding salt myself to control the sodium. Okay, let me add that in. Okay. So now this will come up to a boil, and you want to cook it for, let me refer to the recipe, I need to check. That should cook for about 15 minutes. You're going to bring it to a boil, lower the heat, and simmer it for about 15 minutes until the carrots are tender, okay? I've already made one ahead, so let me bring that in. I'm going to take this guy off and replace it. Now here's one that I've simmered. It's probably gone longer than 15 minutes, but it's okay. It's all good.
Hey, Anna?
Yeah.
Apparently we lost your audio on Facebook.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Okay, well, apparently it's back.
Oh, great. Thank you guys for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. I know that we're having some technical issues. If you missed anything that you'd like for me to repeat, let me know. Basically, I just started sauteing the vegetables. You want to saute them for about 10 minutes, then add in your stock, bring it to a boil, and let that simmer until the carrots are tender, which is about 15 minutes. Then I have these meatballs that I've already cooked up. I should have pulled these off while they were hot. They're a little stuck, but that's okay. So these have been sitting here for a minute. They look almost like sausage balls. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Sausage balls you make with baking mix and cheese. Oh, they smell really good. They're super savory because of the Parmesan cheese, because of that raw garlic clove we added. Okay, I'm gonna try to plop this in.
And we've got a question from the control room, actually.
Oh, great.
What's the difference between stock and broth?
Oh, that is a good question. So, stock, as far as I know, everybody's gonna call me out on this. It's so funny because I know I've written about this before, I've researched this before. It's what I believe, and you guys jump in and tell me because I know viewers out there know the difference. Stock is made with bones. So chicken bones, beef bones, bones are a crucial component of it. I think it's very similar to, if not the same thing as bone broth. And then broth might be made with the meat or trimmings from the meat or the bird. Does that sound right? I was a food editor for a long time, people, but sometimes my memory is not as good as it should be. Okay, so this is up to a simmer. It looks great. I've got the meatballs in there. And now the last step is to add some spinach. So I have 12 ounces of spinach. It's a lot of spinach, but you know how it goes with spinach. Once it cooks, it wilts down a ton. So I'm just gonna start adding this little by little. And it's going to wilt very quickly into the broth. And I love having a lot of spinach. So here's what I love about the soup. It doesn't skimp on the carrots, and it definitely doesn't skimp on the spinach. I might have had a little bit more of my liquid evaporate off since I had this going on the stove for a while. That's okay, it's all good. I'm just gonna let that wilt down. Add another spoonful. I'm gonna go grab my bowls that someone was nice enough to bring me. I do have a ladle. Okay, just gonna add this a little bit at a time, letting it wilt in between. So we have a ton of hot, wonderful broth. I mean, I love a creamy soup, don't get me wrong, but a brothy soup, oh my gosh, that is where my heart is. Tons and tons of spinach. You can feel good about this. It feels indulgent because the meatballs honestly seem a little indulgent. But the soup is so full of vegetables, you can feel really good about serving it up. It makes a ton. It serves 8 people. Leftovers are pretty nice, I know from experience. They are great, warmed up for lunch the next day. Okay, I'm just gonna let that simmer. Grating Parmesan cheese by hand. And grating it using that side of the box grater gives you, you know, the nice little finely grated little pebbly texture. It disperses.